Welcome to Bonehead. It's acquaintance, I know, but I'm hoping to build up a friendship with our guest today, the legendary creator of Wynonna Earp, the marvelous, I'm trying to work Marvel into this, Beau Smith.
Go ahead. Try to work in IDW. Go for it.
Yeah. Let's get some DC in there. Let's see how far we can push Joe to do this intro.
The initialism is going to be a little bit of a bitch. I just got to be honest with you. It's going to be a little bit of a bitch. So, Beau, thank you so much. Before we get started, I want to tell everybody that I had the pleasure of meeting you at Huntington Comic-Con. You about, I don't know if you remember this, but it's about 10 minutes into it. You looked over at me and goes, "You actually did research." I don't expect you to remember that. It was no. I appreciate those things when people actually notice that I did my job. And then we hit it off okay. And I asked you the next day if you'd be on the show, and thank you so much for doing it. And we pride ourselves in trying to ask a question that not everyone asks. And I'm trying to think of a way to put it. You'd be the second person I asked this question to. The other one was Robert Kurtzman, who works in movies. He's KMB, Kurtzman, Nicotero, Burger Effects. And he actually left KMB to go back to Ohio for his family. And I find it fascinating that you've never left Huntington.
No, all 67 years of my sin-filled life has been right here. And I was Huntington born and raised, and last 35 years since I've actually been in the comic book business has been in Cerrito, West Virginia, which is a town of 1,400 people.
Right. So why? Because we'll get to all of the different opportunities you've had to go do other things. You've lost jobs because you wouldn't move out of Huntington, right?
Yeah.
Why? Or West Virginia, I should say. I'm sorry.
To be honest with you, big cities have always, I've been to all of them now, but they scare me. I've never have liked them. I just don't. I grew up in a time when if you thought about New York, Chicago, you thought about getting mugged. Crime was pretty rampant back in the day. I'm sure it still is, but you couldn't go to Times Square back when I was a kid. I mean, it was a totally different thing than it is now. So that was a big part of the reason. Plus, all my family's here. All my friends are here. I like this area a lot. But, and to be honest with you, until I actually made a stab at it 35 years ago, I didn't figure I'd ever write comics or be in it, because you had to live basically in New York to do that. And, there was no technology then. You had a phone. In fact, I mean, one of the biggest deals I did in 6th grade, my mom and dad asked me what I wanted for my birthday. I told them I wanted to call Stan Lee. And I just kept at them, you want a bike, you want a pony, what's the deal? So I ended up getting to call Stan Lee in the 6th grade. And that was, to me, a big deal. I didn't get to talk to him. I got to talk to Flo Steinberg, who, handled everything, but she was great. She talked to me, Joe, for a half an hour on the phone, asked me all kinds of questions, interested in, this. And then 2 weeks later, I got a package in the mail, and it was this, nice manila envelope full of comic books signed by Stan, with a postcard in there from him. And one from a little longer one from Flo saying, "It was great talking to you. I hope 7th grade and junior high goes great for you." I mean, that bit of personal touch then formed a lot of what I've done in my business on the publishing side as well as the writing side for the rest of my career.
So you were talking about how it forms you. And this is a question we've talked about a little bit with people, specifically people who do several conventions. You have a bad day. You're a human being. You always are going to have certain bad days. How do you handle that when you have that pressure? Because normal people don't have that pressure. Oh, I met somebody on the elevator. It's okay. I was an a-hole to them. I'll never see them again. You, specifically after Wynonna Earp, people will remember that. And clearly you find it important to be good to your fans.
Oh, I mean, that's a part of being here from Huntington, West Virginia, small town.
Yeah.
And my dad was a big influence on that. In fact, when I was a kid, my dad had a pinball machine, jukebox, pool table, and then video game business. and you know, hit it in beer joints and, you know, any place that had those things he was. But I noticed something pretty young, that everywhere we went, everybody in town seemed glad to see my dad. Roger, oh, that's slapping him on the back. They were always happy to see him. And to me, as a kid, always thinking superheroes and stuff, I thought like that was his superpower. And that influenced me a lot. I always wanted to be somebody that people were glad to see, not somebody that, you know, hey, that turd owes me $5. You know, I didn't want that kind of a reception and stuff. And that was a big influence on me. Stan Lee, again, getting back to him, was a huge influence in the fact Stan made you like Stan. And if you like Stan, you'll like Marvel Comics. And it worked. I mean, he was the face of Marvel Comics, even when a reluctant face in the beginning. I was lucky enough to become friends with Don Heck, fantastic Silver Age artist with Marvel, and we became friends in the 80s. And he and I would talk once a week, and he would tell me, Stan used to try to get all those guys to come in. Hey, I've got a college newspaper coming in. I've got a reporter coming in. Won't you guys come in? You know, and they were churning out a monthly book. So, you know, they couldn't come in. They didn't want to come in. They just wanted to do the work. And they didn't want to, you know, they weren't
and they're writers.
show guys.
Some of them are they're artists. They're introverts.
Oh, big time. I'm a big time introvert. I just turn it up the volume. I mean, I have to, but you know, that's again part of the reason why I live in a small town too. But that's why. I'll tell you, I got a Capcom video. You know, they've done video games.
Right.
And this is San Diego 20 years ago. And I didn't know it, but there was a high school guy came up, showed me his portfolio. I spent about a half hour with him talking to him. 20 years later, I get a call from Capcom, and this is the guy that's creative director and wants to hire me to write Maximo and Maximo Army of Zen, the video games. Well, I told him, you know, I haven't played a video game since Pong. I said, I don't know, you know, I can't do this stuff. He goes, well, you don't have to. This is like a screenplay. Anyway, did the job, very lucrative job, great, loved it. That was that guy whose portfolio I looked at when he was 15 years old.
Yep. And,
you know, I didn't know that until afterwards. He goes, yeah, you spent a half hour with me. You didn't have to. And I just want somebody to be as, you know, nice to me as possible. And before I got in the industry, Robert Kandiger, Walt Simonson, Mike Barron, Tim Truman, there were all these guys that were in the industry that did not have to, Flo Steinberg, to talk to me, give me the time of day, did. And that made a big difference to me. And I've always wanted to pay that back if I ever got the chance.
That's fantastic, Beau. I love hearing this story, and I love it when you're talking about when you're giving back. And sometimes if you're having an off day, you just suck it up, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And that came more on the business end. I was VP of marketing for Eclipse Comics, for Todd McFarlane Productions, McFarlane Toys, Image Comics, and IDW Publishing. And that's where you really have to suck it up, because there were times that, you know, in the old days, it would have been, let's go out back of the convention hall here and we'll sort it out.
Yeah.
But on the creative side, not so much, but on the business side, oh yeah, big time.
Yeah. What so before, I know Chad's got a question ready to go, but I'm kind of curious, and this is a cliche question, but you probably in town do you have a lot of people stopping you?
Again, that really didn't happen too much till the TV show hit 6 years ago. And the sign on my back, it says I'm Beau Smith, Wynonna Earp, helps a lot. Yeah. But it did. It kind of started then because fortunately there aren't too many people that look like me. So that helped. And, you know, it went well. It was surprising, and especially here, because being an introvert, I kind of like having my, you know, time to myself and stuff. And I did make it clear in conventions years ago and stuff. I said, you show up at my house, we're gonna have trouble, you know. So everyone was pre-warned on things like that. I got a 100-pound dog that would love to gnaw on somebody, and I'm not going to discuss what I would probably do.
No, that's
with
okay.
a surprise visit.
We're all from Appalachia. We're all packing. But I mean, have you had a bad experience with
Well,
it?
I'm packing a tub of peanut butter. That's what he's referring to behind me.
Don't ask
Hey.
why he still wants to meet the dog. Now,
Well, trust me, that'll warm his heart. That's for sure.
but have you had a bad experience with a fan?
No, I can't. I can't think of any time I ever did, and I think that's because I warded off anything. But I got to be honest with the Wynonna Earp fans in particular, because that stuff started the notoriety on a big level. Then have been the most respectful, kind, and gracious fan base I've ever dealt with in my life. And I've been in comics 35 years with, a wonderful fan base within the direct market and stuff. But on a worldly one, I've never met the Earpers. I have never met kinder, more gracious people in my entire life. And I say that with utter truth, which I don't utter much, but
That's okay.
seriously. Yeah.
I moderated these
wonderful.
conventions and I can't even say that.
No, they were great. And I think a lot of the difference is they're the Wynonna Earp base of fans are pretty much women from ages 15 to 55, where my fan base within the direct market has been males 15 to 55. And, as guys, I know that camaraderie between me and my buddies is, you bust them in the shoulder, you bust their chops, this, that, and the other. And I was used to that. I was used to snide remarks back and forth with each other. But with the Wynonna Earp, with the Earpers, man, it was a different world. And it took a little adjusting because I wasn't used to people being just so genuinely nice to me. I mean, I don't mean that my buddies and stuff weren't, but
especially women,
big change.
Random women, random lovely folks being nice to you, and you're like,
yeah,
are you talking to the other person behind me?
Exactly, Joe. You hit it right on the head. That's what I felt like.
Yeah, I get it, because I it's happened a few times, and it's always because they think we know somebody. I'm glad I almost made you spit, but it's like, oh, I'm not.
It was close. It was close.
Nice to that fat bearded man. He'll introduce lovely Beau Smith. All right, Chad, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, well, I kind of want to revisit what you were mentioning earlier about Stan Lee and everything. So was Marvel your main influence to get into comics, or did DC have an impact on you?
DC was my go-to comic books before until about 1961 when I was in first grade. And Marvel was and it was Fantastic Four, one right around in there that I'd picked up because I was in first grade. And Chad, that changed everything. All of a sudden, I was reading comic books that I kind of looked around the room going, are any adults looking? Should I really be reading this? I mean, these people are acting real. And I was mesmerized by those. And I knew then that, I wanted to do. In fact, in school, they always asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And my age group was always a cowboy, an astronaut, a mill. And mine was, I want to write comic books.
Were you a friend with somebody who said they wanted to be a milkman?
I'm the one who said they wanted to be a milkman
Really?
before that. I thought then, because then the trucks looked really, really neat. I mean, they looked like something out of a 40s movie. I thought I'd spend all day driving around that truck drinking chocolate milk.
Oh, that makes sense.
That's
okay.
That's the job I wanted. And you got to get up early. It was fun, but that changed. Marvel Comics changed my occupational desires.
Wow.
So it was. I mean, that was
Was it one comic in particular, or was it just them as a whole?
The comic book that got me hooked on comic books just in general was Batman 143, and it was a Bat Hound and the Alien. One of those goofy, nutty, covers that I just thought was wonderful. And that was a little bit before I was in first grade, because I was really pissed off because the first day I went to school, first grade, I was mad when I came home because I thought when I came home, I would be able to read this. I didn't know they didn't teach you to read in one day. And I was none too happy. But Marvel Comics is what got me to where I wanted to write them. I wanted to make those kind of stories up. And Fantastic Four 1, First Avengers, all those that I got off the newsstand were the key ones. To be honest with you, though, it was probably the run of Daredevil. My first Daredevil issue was 15, where he fought the Ox. And for whatever reason, John Romita did the art, Stan did the story. At that point, I was probably 6th grade. I said, I want to write these. I went back. I got every Daredevil comic before that. That's the one that just really flipped the switch.
That's awesome. So I kind of got to jump forward quite a bit because I did not
jump around anyway.
Yeah, I did not have. So, I will say this, the comic, I can't even tell you the title of it. It was a comic book. My mom picked me up at a Winn-Dixie when I was like in 2nd grade. It was a Marvel comic book. I've been meaning to track it down. It actually, I can tell you everything about it. It featured them in a hotel, and it was Mojo in the back of the hotel, like controlling the X-Men, and they end up in a big pile on top of one another, knocked out at the end. I could tell you frame by frame what it was, but I can't tell you the story. But that actually got me hooked on comics. It made me want to read comics. And then quickly after that, I turned into a DC Comics person. Don't ask me why. But you wrote one of my favorite characters in DC, and that's Guy Gardner. And in particular, you wrote one of the most unique story arcs of that character, because out of all the DC comic heroes, he's had one of the more fluctuating lifestyle of images throughout the history. And his role as Warrior is one of the more unique. How did you get assigned to that? And how did you all develop that?
That was the last of the fun. Is the way I put that. Chuck Dixon, a good friend of mine, he and I broke into the industry together at the same time, had been writing it before. He actually wrote the first couple of issues of Guy Gardner Warrior that they were doing. And he, his plate has been and always is full. So he, I got to go off this. And the sales on the book were extremely high anyway. At that point, they were right around 40,000, which, Marvel and DC canceled books easily at that point then. Right. Now they would dance on a table. But he said, I'm going to leave this. He suggested to Kevin Dooley and Eddie Berganza, the 2 editors on that, Beau Smith would be great. He could step right into this gloves for you. And I kind of knew Kevin from the fan days. He and I were about the same age. And Eddie Berganza I knew from his time at Starlog magazine. He had done some articles at on Eclipse stuff, and I had, helped him on that. So I got the job. They called me up and asked me if I wanted to do that. They go, you can't guarantee it's going to be very long. Sales aren't real good, but as long as we're going to do the book, you want to try to, I said, yeah, sure. And the first issue was 20, which I asked them, I started asking, can I use Wonder Woman? Can I use Batman? Can I use, they were going, yeah. And again, that's what I'm saying. It was the end of the fun, because back then on a near canceled book at DC Comics, you had freedom. And canceled book, they're not going to care what you do. And corporate wise, they were not as tight on Batman, Wonder Woman, and you can do this, you can't do that. It was like, sure, yeah, go ahead and use them. But my goal with Guy Gardner Warrior was first and foremost to make him a likable character. I always liked the character, but the Batman one punch thing that went on. Yeah. It was funny. I laughed at the time, but it was frat boy humor in the fact that a lot of these guys in that Wizard magazine humor, when I say that, and I can say it because a lot of those guys are my friends, but they rode that horse till it was, there was nothing left. Right. And there was, to me as a writer, there's more to characters than that. So my challenge was to make Guy Gardner the same, but make him likable. And that was it. And I wanted to make his supporting cast all the land of misfit toys of DC Comics. I brought Wildcat back, Lady Blackhawk, a couple of the Metal Men, Tiger Man from My Greatest Adventure. I read that as a kid in the 60s. I wanted to bring back all these people and give them these characters, and give them a second life in that book. And Guy was my goal. And man, I got to do him from issue 20 through 44, 2 annuals and a couple of specials, far beyond what I thought. And we brought sales up to about 65, 70,000, which was DC took notice because other editors started borrowing Guy Gardner for other books. My only concession was I kept telling him, yeah, he can morph weapons of ancient warriors, but they had him doing egg beaters, chainsaws, and I knew that was going to happen. But I was playing with someone else's toys, so you roll with the flow.
Yeah, they in some issues they kind of turned him into Plastic Man, which was kind of a tragic thing because Guy Gardner is not Plastic Man. He's
no. Mm-mm.
And you turned him into a Wild West hero, which was, I thought, I never saw coming.
Well, thank you. That was part of my goal. I mean, because it really was, Chad.
I love Keith Giffen. Don't get me wrong, but he did kind of turn Guy Gardner into a schlock character.
So,
I mean, how many issues did he walk around not being Mr. Nice Guy because Batman punched him? I mean, it was
a lot. And again, like you said, there was a fluctuation of character changes, which they tried to say it was all the concussions, it was this, it was that. And I tried to slim some of that down. Again, I had nothing to lose. What's the worst they were going to do? Kick me off a book that I didn't own?
Right.
I had nothing to lose. And I ended up with everything to gain because I had a lot of fun. I think I accomplished the goal of making Guy likable. And I told Eddie and Kevin that I wanted humor in this, not slapstick humor. I wanted everyday humor that people that are friends, that are buddies have. And that's why I wanted to build his supporting cast up with the misfit toy kind of guys. And the very first thing that I did in 20 to get Guy Gardner that respect was he was not getting that respect, say 3-4 pages into it. But when Wonder Woman, Diana Prince, stopped everybody and told Guy that, she was backing him, and then told him to call her Diana, bang, that was it. That was the moment that anybody reading that book is going, what are they going to do here? She's giving him respect. Maybe I should at least give a chance to give respect. Now I'm going to tell you guys something I don't think I've told anybody else. Again, corporately, they were not as tight on iconic characters, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, as they are today. My goal was, if I can make this into 10, if I can go 10 issues on this, I'm going to have Guy and Wonder Woman get married.
Oh,
now it was going to be one of these, we're going to do it as a convenience to fool a bad guy type of thing. We're going to have to act like we're married. You used to see him in the 60s Doris Day, Rock Hudson rom-coms. I mean, that kind of situation. But afterwards, after they, it's over, they defeated the bad guy, but they've been playing married for a few issues. It was going to be that they part, but hopefully for on it, we could have made a run at this. Both of them thinking that, and both of them feeling that. So I wanted to give that emotion, that respect into both characters, because I never thought, even though Wonder Woman was an iconic character, I told those guys back then, the editors, that I said, everybody handles her different. There's the goofy one, there's the serious one, there's the feminist one. Which one is she? I said, I want to be able to use her, and then for the readers to be able to tell me what's on her iPod. If they can tell me what she's playing on her iPod, they're going to know about that character. They're going to care about her. No matter what the confrontation is, they're going to be there because they're going to be emotionally invested in it. Unfortunately, didn't get to that point, so I did the best by just having her give him respect. Superman gave him respect. That was in the issue where he fought Sledge and Steel, the character Steel. I did it in small parts, just trying to give guys much respect from the other characters. Hopefully the readers would too.
Awesome.
I'm sorry. I was just sitting here thinking of Pillow Talk for the last 10. And most of our listeners aren't even going to know what the hell that is.
No, You're right.
Tony
Yeah,
Randall was a national treasure. Sorry, James.
So, I've got to ask this question because my
Sure.
parents made a mistake when I was young, and the mistake they made.
Oh, I have a really bad joke.
I know you have
Oh,
several jokes I set
yeah.
myself up for, but let's forego those.
Joe and I could tag team this for a good
But
hour,
anyway,
but we're here to talk to Beau.
They basically had this agreement that if it was a book, they would buy it for me, and I conned my way into that, including comic books. And I've turned out relatively well, so it paid off.
Once again, stop leaving.
I know.
yourself
I know.
alone.
I know. That being said, you talked about your father and all that. How did they and asking them for calling Stan Lee? How did your parents respond to that? Because I think that's one of the things that we always hear the stories of my parents threw away my comic books, my parents, and all of that. So how did that navigate? As growing up and saying, I want to be a comic book writer, was that one of those things? Because I'll be honest, my father always looked at it as, that's nice, go do your stuff.
Well, my parents were only 19 years older than me. So I had always had the youngest parents, which was a very good thing. They, my mom's one rule, which was minor, was, don't leave those on the floor. That was it. No way, I wouldn't anyway. I was wrapping them in saran wrap and putting them on a shelf. But they never once, I used to tell them I wanted to write comics. They went, okay, if that's what you want to do, but you got to know how to spell, so pay attention in class. And as far as, I wasn't the brightest kid in school. I was busy daydreaming. I was making up stories and writing them in my notebook when I should have been doing arithmetic. So, from there through high school, I made better grades in college just because it was more focused. But I made pretty bad grades because I was always daydreaming. I was always making up stories. Back then, I was writing Wyatt Earp and his brothers fighting the Universal monsters. That's where Wynonna Earp ended up coming from.
Can we see that movie? Can you write that now? I would pay to see that.
We could go watch Billy the Kid versus meets Dracula's daughter.
See, those are the things that influenced me as a kid. And, they were good about that. Now, my teachers, counselors, things like that was always, you've got to have a regular job. You want to write, you're going to have to do newspapers, magazines, that kind of things. Books, if you must. But I was not encouraged at all. And, to be honest with you, I kept my creativity kind of low profile back then. I was a pretty well-rounded kid. I wrestled, I boxed, ran track. I did all that. Girls started in junior high, all that. But I always kept the creative side kind of low key because I didn't know how people would handle it. I was from 70s. High school's when I quit reading comics for about 3-4 years because I was busy doing extracurricular activities that I'd be in jail for now. So... But it was great because once I got married for the first time in 80, I got to go back and get all those Bronze Age comics. It was like collecting all over again that I missed. But
being a geek at that time could have got the shit kicked out of you. It's not like it is now.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, I wasn't so worried about that part.
But it's not socially acceptable 50 or 60 years ago.
I was going to say, a friend of mine briefly owned a comic book store, and that's the comment that he always made when he was running the comic book store. Yeah, we grew up in the 80s and 90s, and he said all the people that made fun of us for reading comics, now that they're in movies, are coming into the shop going, "Hey, this is cool, man!" And he was like, "Where was that? Where was that attitude? 15 years ago when you were in the hallway, holding me down like this." But,
sorry, Beau. Go back to your.
No. I didn't have to worry about that end too much because, like I said, I was not.
You were a jock.
You were a scrapper.
I was not an angel. People used to sniff glue by the river. We thought, no, that ain't right. We took bamboo sticks, the kind that crossing guards used at school. We took it and we went down there and just beat the crap out of that stuff because this is stupid. You shouldn't be doing this. Whack, that kind of thing. So vigilante justice, I guess. But and I'm not proud of that.
No, but you're just pretending to be Wyatt Earp.
It was that and started drinking beer in about 6th grade didn't help. So, and I I'm not saying that as bragging, but that's just the way it was then. So it was and I got to use a lot of what happened to me from, say, 7th grade to college, in stories. So it's worked out. But I've never done any jail time, so everything's good. But
it came through at a different time where not everything was recorded.
Yeah, and creativity. Again, if you were a creative person, you didn't go around announcing it back then. I mean, dating a girl and she goes, "Oh, you're still reading comic books? Maybe I ought to start going out with Jimmy." He doesn't read comic books. He's an idiot, but he doesn't read comics. So, I kept that stuff low key. And most people, my friends and stuff, knew I did, but they didn't care. It was a casual thing, but I kept it low key. That's for certain. But once I got to college, though, it was okay. I met other people that were into comics, traded with them, this kind of, and it was legit then. It was good. So, and I had people I could talk shorthand, like all of us, 4 of us. We can talk shorthand. We don't, Joe and I have met, but Chad and James and I, we can talk shorthand all day, know what the other one's talking about.
Mm-hmm. You and
when
Chad
it comes to comics,
yeah,
comics, films, all that kind of stuff. I didn't have that growing up. Very few people that I could talk shorthand to on pop culture in general.
It didn't exist. We're in a different time now, and we came through. I think Chad, James, and I came through at the last part where it wasn't probably as socially acceptable. You wasn't as included in high school. You kept it yourself. And like you were saying, these 2 idiots below me, Morehead State University.
I spoke at Morehead,
and 20-some years later, Morehead State University, we're still friends. So we totally get it. Oh, when did you speak at Morehead?
Me and Amanda Connor did. We spoke to the creative writing course that they had down there at the time, and this was in the 90s. We it's not that far from me, but they flew her in. She came and brought her mother even, and
it was 98 or 99. I'm going to be pissed because we were there.
We were there.
Well, it was right around that time period, to be honest with you, maybe 95.
Okay,
but she would just finish doing, well, I'll tell you guys might be able to, I think she just finished doing Gargoyles Marvel, and she was starting to do more DC stuff then.
That's cool. Yeah, actually, I think we came right around the last of that. They would bring people in. I don't think they do a lot of that anymore, but that's a higher ed thing. We don't bring in as much.
Now, I was about to say, but I have a soft spot in Morehead for Morehead State University's creative writing department, because that's one of the only places that has ever published anything I've written other than academic stuff. So well, I have a soft spot for that.
Let me stop and ask you guys a question here right now, if you don't mind.
No. Shit, you can ask us anything.
This is again. No, I can't handle it. I can't. Oh no,
we make the rules, Beau. I don't want any of your shit.
Mommy,
hope you're having a good time, because this isn't much different than us just hanging out. So keep going. What's
That's
your question?
Good. No, my question was, how old are you guys?
106.
That's your left leg. What about your right?
I'm 44, bud.
Okay, you're 44.
Yeah.
James, Chad,
42.
And I'll be 42 in 10 days.
Okay.
12 days.
The only reason I'm asking is that gives me an idea when you are talking about stuff, what age you were at that period of comic books and pop culture. And that helps me out a lot, that I'm not mentioning something that's way too old, or
If it comes to comics, you can lose me. You can't lose the 2 below me.
It was. I mean, because pop culture fed everything I did. Like I sometimes think my son specifically is my punishment for being who I am, because like he got really into Fortnite for a while, and every conversation would be like, I'd be like, oh, let's have pizza. You know what? There's a pizza character in front. And I'd be like, oh. And then I realized this is what my parents went through, because everything was through the lens of movies or comic books. Star Trek. Star Trek was literally you mentioned every birthday it was like, what do you want? I don't know, Star Trek stuff. Of course that's what I want. Or comic book. I mean, that was what I did. It was, and I would love to say that quit when I was in high school. It did not. Matter of fact, this is true. This is true. My birthday was not too long ago, and my mother sent me a box of the Star Trek Hallmark ornaments going, I knew you'd like these. And I honestly was ecstatic. I was like, oh, this is cool. They talk now. This is awesome.
That's perfect. Being able to let your love and passion for something, from being young and on, it makes it so easy because, I'm a December baby. So I had Christmas in 8 days. Before that was my birthday. I didn't have what you had. They got me things they thought, I would like, but it wasn't the stuff I really wanted. And to be able to be free in that time period, to be able to do that, oh man, that'd have been great.
I know it is.
You're just one generation before us, though, Beau.
Oh, let me put it this way: my youngest son is your all's age.
You're just one generation before us, and unfortunately, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about when it comes to toys and things, they just didn't exist. So we had a director, House on Haunted Hill, Bill Malone. William Malone was on, and he was talking about, because you and Bill are probably about the same age, and there were certain toys that he just built, that you'd get model kits for and things like that. He would just build, and he was a sculptor, and he just have to, well, you can't go out and buy it. What? He just would build them.
Oh, I wish I had the talent to have done that, because I would have tried.
You don't have that talent either.
But no.
We have none of that.
Dang.
No. But I think that's it, and that's what I do. And like you said, we can have this shorthand and talking about comic books and all of that. I think one thing that I really admire about comic books is the quote unquote age of a character doesn't matter, because it's always going to pop back up, right? I mean,
yeah.
Like Marvel relaunches about every 15 years. They'll do a limited run of the Invaders, and I always pick it up because I'm always like, oh, Android Human Torch, I've got to read that. I've got to name all of that. And so I think that's one of the things that my father wasn't a comic book fan, but what I found was it snuck in anyway, just because when he grew up, like he knew the Iron Man theme song from the old Iron Man cartoon of Tony Stark, he'll make you feel cool. And I caught him once humming it, and I'm like, I know that. And he was like, oh yeah. He goes, well, you get off work, you watch whatever's on. And I was like, oh no, you were a fan. You just didn't, it wasn't socially acceptable. He played football. In high school, he did all this stuff. And then eventually he came around and he goes, yeah, I also really like Super Chicken. And I'm like, this is fascinating.
That had to have made your day. I mean, seriously, that had to.
It was really, and that's why one of the reasons I love doing these interviews and having these conversations, because really pop culture unites people in ways that we don't think about. And that was, my father worked in a factory. When I went to college, he was like, don't get a Bachelor of Arts in anything. Nobody's going to pay you for art. I mean, that was his mentality. He worked in a factory. He did engineering. And it wasn't until I got old enough to realize, I'm like, no, he had other things. He's just in this mindset of, I work, I provide, and
he's trying to set that up for you.
Yeah. And then realizing that, as I got older, he likes action movies and he likes this and so
we're not interviewing you, bud.
No, but what I was going to say is
I'm loving it though. I'm loving it.
I think that's one of the things that
right now.
I think that's one of the things that it gets to how that fandom works. And one of the things that I did read about you wrote into comic books as well. The term letter hack, I think, is sometimes applied. And so was that part of also that process? What impact did that have when you saw your words printed in a comic book, just in the letter pages?
Again, I've got to use Stan Lee as an example. I was 30. I got into comics late as far as creative. A lot of people do it in their 20s and stuff. I was approaching my middle 30s, and I was recently divorced. Wasn't living with my son. It wasn't a great time, and I was at a dead end job. And I remember leaving that dead end job one night, went outside, summer night, and not much different from tonight. And I sit on the tail of my pickup truck, and I took off the vest that we had to wear at my dead end job, and I set it down there, and I hated that thing because it represented I wasn't doing what I wanted to do. Nothing wrong with the job, the company, anything like that, but it to me always reminded me I wasn't doing what I wanted to do. And I had moved back to my mom and dad's house, after having my own and, everything else. It was just kind of a rock bottom. I mean, a lot of other people's rock bottom makes that look like nothing. But to me, that was at that time. And I said, you've always wanted to write comics. I said, you got to make a stab at it. So I had to come up with some sort of plan, even though I was in a small town, West Virginia. There still was not fax. There was not, anything but a phone. So every comic book that I bought at the comic book store, let's say I bought 6 that week. And back then it was on Fridays. I said, okay, I'm going to read this one. As soon as I got through reading it, I wrote a letter of comment to the editor and the assistant editor. I made sure to attach them because the assistant editor is going to be the editor soon. So a bit of it was marketing as well. I signed my full name, Stephen Scott Beau Smith, because I thought that will set it apart from Joe, who just put his first and last name in there. Then I said, don't make the letters real long. Make them short, concise, add humor to them, be constructive criticism, but kind of try to be funny if you can. And so I started doing that with every comic I bought every week. And I was sending out at least 10 letters a week. Well, after a while, the editors, started printing some of them. I mean, whether they were flooded with them or what, I don't know. And that was a thrill to see my name, my words in a printed comic book, which I've had comics on an altar for so long. And I'm cutting a lot of this short, but
it's okay. Take your time.
While the editors contacted me and sent me Xerox copies of an issue coming up 3 issues ahead, saying, we want to have a letter column for that first issue of this mini series, this new thing. Would you mind reading this and giving us a letter of comment? So, yeah, you don't have to ask me twice. So I did that and started building rapport long distance through the snail mail with editors and assistant editors. The place I was working at was giving away T-shirts. It was audio video sales and stuff. I sent those editors all T-shirts. You get a package with a shirt, it's the early 80s. You're going to remember that. You're going to remember that guy with 4 names gave me a T-shirt.
That's still true today, by the way. People give free shirts. People get foaming at the mouth. Free shirt, free shirt.
That's it, Chad. I mean, that was kind of the thought, and it helped. I don't say it worked, but it helped. But I could only do that so far. I had probably over 300 letters printed in Marvel, DC, and everything else. But there came a time that I said, okay, I've done this, but I got to take it up to the next level. So I always subscribed with Westfield Comics through the mail. We didn't have a lot of comic shops in our area and stuff. And I'd built up a good relationship with them. And I wrote for their newsletter. So they said, we will send you to Chicago Con. We'll pay for your flight, your hotel, food, everything. All we will ask for you to do is when you come back to write a report for our newsletter in it. I said, yeah, and I'd never flown before anything. So it was a big deal.
What year was it? How old were you? I'm sorry. I'm trying to make sure I got the timeline right. What year was this? How old?
It was 80, probably about 80. Let's see, divorced at 80, about 85.
85?
I would say that'd be, I'm trying to figure out from my son's age. So yeah, it was about 85.
Okay.
And because that works into the whole, I'm just thinking now. So I went and I made the most of being at that because that's where I met Shooter. I told you the Peter David story. Poor Peter, took a spill. But I met other people there. And I got that. I would introduce myself. And you're the guy with 4 names. They knew that. And I got to be honest with you, they were a little surprised to meet me because sometimes I was a couple of years older than they are. So it wasn't, I wasn't a 14-year-old kid. But it was at that one. I met Shooter, Peter David. There was a lot of people I met. And Tim Truman was starting to do scout at Eclipse Comics. And introduced myself, I really like the book. He goes, hey, I've printed some of your letters. We start talking. He goes, where are you from? I said, Huntington, West Virginia. He goes, I was born in Dixie, West Virginia. We start this whole West Virginia thing. We became lifetime buddies from that moment on. and I'm advancing a lot of stuff on this, but at one point when Eclipse no longer had the sales manager and they were looking for a new one, Tim told me, he goes, hey, you know, won't you take what you do in your day job and can you apply it to comics? Because Eclipse is looking for somebody to be a sales manager for the retail and distribution. And I said, yeah, sure I can. I said, but Eclipse is in Santa Rosa, California. I'm not moving there. And he goes, I don't think you'll have to. Well, that's odd. So Dean Mullaney, the publisher, Dean, his brother Jan, they were the co-founders of Eclipse Comics, and Cat Ironwood was the editor-in-chief, who was also Dean Mullaney's wife at the time. The ABA, the American Booksellers Association, was in Washington, D.C. And Dean said, yeah, I've talked to Tim. Won't you come? I'll pay for your flight and everything in a hotel. Come, I'd like to meet you and talk to you. So once again, here I go, and a whole new adventure. I go to Washington. Dean neglected to give me credentials and a badge to get in. So there I am at the American Booksellers Association thing. A guy goes, well, I need your credentials. Do you have a badge? I had to lie and be a criminal quickly. I said, no, my brother is up there. He's a publisher for Eclipse Comics. Dean Mullaney is his name. I've got bad family news. I've got to get there. And I didn't ask him, could you let me in? I said, could you relay this to him? I said, it won't be easy. And he was going, no. Come with me. I'll get you. We're at Eclipse booth, blah, blah, blah. Bottom line is he takes me up there to the Eclipse. He goes, are you Dean Mullaney? He goes, yes, Sammy. He goes, well, I've got your brother, Beau Smith. He never did anything about the names, because divorces, this, that, the other, half brother. He never, he was so worried about having to tell him possibly that a relative had died that he was ready to let me. He goes, well, here he is. So Dean and I started talking. I had explained to them what I'd done. And Tim Truman and Chuck Dixon were there for Eclipse as well. And Dean looked at me right then. He goes, I'm sorry, profusely for not leaving your credentials. He goes, if you got in here and did that, he goes, I'm not worried about you doing the job. You're hired. And then he handed me Xeroxes of Advanced Comics. He goes, see those people over there? He goes, that's Diamond Distribution. That's our biggest distributor. Back then we had probably 25, 26. They were everywhere. And each one had warehouses. It was just a lot more than it was today. He goes, they don't like us. Bill Shanus is one of their head guys, and he used to own Pacific Comics, which I bought, and he has not wanted to bury the hatchet since then. Go over there and make them, was what he said. So I went over there, and Bill will attest to this. Bill and I have been friends for well over 30 years, but he was, holding a grudge. And I had nothing against Bill because I like Pacific Comics, but we worked it out a few years later. And like I said, Bill's been one of my best buddies in this industry for many, many years. Steve Jeppe the same way. But that was my first assignment, my first job. So naturally, when the time came for writing, Tim again gave me a backup in Scout to do. First was Bo LeDuc's Tips for Real Men. So always write what you know best. Well, I know me, I know the amplified version of me, and a mix of my dad and John Wayne. So Bo LeDuc was his name. And, he was, especially nowadays, but then, even then, politically incorrect and rough and tough and all this stuff. So we had these little one-page things. Well, that expanded into me getting to do Bo LeDuc and the Dogs of Danger. So it was a backup in Scout or Swords of Texas, which was another Tim Truman produced book. And I got to do that. And to show you how I thought this ride was going to end at any time, I put every family member, friend, my insurance agent was the bad guy in it. I put everybody I knew because I said, I'm going to get this one shot and this is going to be it. At least I'm going to be able to make my friends and family famous for a few minutes. Well, it ended up the character Bo LeDuc, Tim used him in Scout. He became a regular member of that. And it started my writing career. It wasn't a few years later that Dean knew that I loved the Golden Age character, the Black Terror. And that was the only comic book that my dad, that and Black Hawk, that my dad read as a kid because I asked him about that. And so it was a goal of mine to tip the hat to my dad to do a Black Terror comic, public domain. Me, Chuck Dixon, and Dan Brereton, it was Dan's first major work. He was right out of art school. We got to do a prestige series, 3 issues on that, which not a lot of people, especially the Eclipse, were getting. But Dean, believed in me, believed in Chuck, and of course Dan's amazing art, and let us do that. And again, yes, I do. I brag on myself all the time, and I'm going to do that now. I still think that 3-issue miniseries will hold up against anything out there today. A lot of people go, it's always Watchmen, Dark Knight, this, that, the other. To me, that was never a true superhero book. That was a crime novel. If you guys ever get the chance to read it, please do. I think you'll agree with me. Yeah. And again, that's me being confident in what the work was. But that has never been collected. You can still find it sometimes in dollar boxes, even though it was a $5 book at the time. But you noticed, and then Joe, I warned you about this at show, how I get diarrhea of the mouth. No, all you got to do is say one thing about that's almost a question, and I'll go on forever.
Did you look up at the clock? Did you look? Is that what you were doing? You looked up at the clock, didn't you?
Nope. I have not.
I saw you do this and lean up and go at the clock. Now, by the way,
no, there's a mirror. I was just looking at myself.
Oh well, I can't stop looking at you anyway, so we're all good there.
So again, I apologize.
No, we loved it.
That's what we're here for. This is what we want to hear from you. So yeah, this is amazing.
So I was going back and looking at my original notes and my original questions, and actually what's funny is we didn't talk about what we were going to ask, and James asked one of my original questions about letter hacking, and then and then it led to that great story that I wanted you to tell again about you getting in and faking the family emergency, because I know people say fake it till you make it, and I know that's, but it truly is just trying to have confidence and put confidence out there to make people feel at ease, so you're able just to kind of grab your shot and take your shot.
I was desperate to take my shot. Yeah. I truly was at that time. I didn't want to hurt anybody or lie too bad, but it was. And again, Joe, I told you this at the show, and I'm not putting myself in comparison, but it had to be the same feeling Michael Jordan had the first time he touched a ball. Yes. It's like I was born to do something with this ball. And with comics, at that Batman 143, I knew this, I was gravitated, I was mesmerized. There was just something about words and pictures I had to be a part of.
And I think I told you this, it's a Stephen King thing. It's a Stephen King quote. I think I told you the same thing. Stephen King referencing Jerry Lee Lewis, saying Jerry Lee grew up poor. First time he ever saw a piano, he didn't know what it was, but he had to get at it. Stephen King found his Lovecraft novels because his dad had walked out on them, and he found them upstairs, and he didn't know what that Lovecraft book was about, but he had to get at it.
It's that's it.
And I completely understand. It's how I fell in love with movies. It's how I fell in love getting to do this, interviewing people and getting on stage with you all. I don't know what it is, but I got to get at it.
Oh, I know what you mean. I mean, not too many people get to feel that. I mean, I hope somebody feels that way about accounting or some other job.
I need somebody to do my accounting. I need somebody to do those other things. I get it.
And you want that accounting to be passionate, right? You want that accounting to be like, I've got to do this. I've got to get it right. I don't know what it
is, but I got to get at it. I'm sorry.
100%. 100%.
Real quick, I just want to clarify. So is the Black Terror, was that the book that was subtitled The Seduction of Deceit?
Yes.
Just found a copy. I'm ordering it. So thank you. It's on my to read list now.
Well, you have to. The only thing I ask is let me know what you think.
Will do.
Be honest. If you hate it, you hate it.
We won't hate it.
Yeah, you never know.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't get to read it for research for this. All right, Jeff.
I got one question, but something just popped up, and I'm going to get your thoughts on it, because I looked up Batman 143.
Yep.
And it's written by the now appreciated Bill Finger, who until a few years ago, no one knew who the hell he was. And I was curious, what did the Batman and Bill documentary that got released, did you watch it? Did it have an impact on you?
I've never seen it. I didn't know that it was out there.
If you have Hulu,
Yep, sure do.
it's on
Let me
Hulu.
I'm writing
I
that
can email
down.
it to you, Beau.
It's called Batman and Bill. It is an amazing documentary. It's about a man who is, the filmmaker is trying to get Bill Finger credit on Batman. And
this great. I had no idea it existed. This is
and
great.
It is fascinating.
And it's heart-wrenching.
I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, it's you need to check it out.
Most definitely.
But knowing now that Bill Finger is now officially getting credit for creating Batman, I mean, how are your thoughts on that? I was just curious if you had any thoughts.
I looked at it, and it's the same way with professional baseball. Went through this once baseball cards got hot and people were making money, selling baseball cards and getting signatures and stuff. A lot of times, and I haven't seen this, but from talking to a lot of the pros that I became friends with that were, from that era, and you're from the 40s, 50s, and even 60s, they had no idea. A lot of times they didn't care. A lot of times they were ashamed they were doing comics, but there were a few that I talked to that had the passion for comic books, and they did them, but they never, to be honest with you, the ones that I became friends with never thought about creativity. That half the time, because I would ask questions about that. I said, well, you came in on this. Did you create the design on this character? And think, nah, it was, a little bit, but this art said, don't you, again, when I questioned the times I was asking them was mainly in the 80s, because a lot of them passed away. They didn't care. They didn't think about it. They didn't think that day they never thought they would see it on screen, that kind of thing. So, I mean, I'm glad that it's happened, because the generation before me, and it's not really a generation, but Len Wein, Marv Wolfman, guys that are basically right around 5 to 10 years older than me, they were the first fans to break in as pros. And I'm so glad to see a lot of them get credit, for stuff that, they did as work for hire contracts that, to get the credit, the acknowledgement. I don't think we see it enough with the Golden Age guys, even today. You have a few that have garnered it and fought for it, but Jack Kirby did. I have a wonderful Jack Kirby story to go with my Stan Lee.
Oh my gosh.
I don't think it took that fan base that I was talking about that's 5 to 10 years older than me to fight for Jack, to get Jack to start fighting for himself. Because, for years, I don't think he demanded enough of it. I think he could have, he was a fighter and a tough guy, but I wish he could have gotten.
He just did it for the love of the art, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and to create, but my Jack Kirby story doesn't have much to do with that part as much as it does what he was a nice guy. Remember the convention I told you about that I got to go to through Westfield Comics? They paid my way. First time I flew on the shuttle bus going to the Rosemont Hotel was Jack and Roz Kirby. Of course, I knew what Jack Kirby looked like. I mean, as a kid, anytime I saw a picture of Stan, Jack, any of the creators, in fact, in one old comic, they put pictures of the whole bullpen. And I introduced myself. And again, I wasn't a kid, but I introduced myself to him. And I told him what I did for a living and this at dinner. And I told him why I was coming to the convention. This is my first time I've flown, first convention I've been to. I'm doing this. And they were so wonderful and gracious. He sat there and asked me questions about me, what comics I like, not what comics of mine do you like, but what was the first one you read? He and Roz both were wonderful. The bus gets there, shuttle bus gets to the hotel, going to check in. He's going to check in. There were people waiting for him. oh, Jack, over here, we're going to get you taken care of and stuff like that. So I'm standing there. He goes, wait. He goes, Beau, come over here. This is my friend Beau Smith. He's from West Virginia. We came out here, blah, blah, blah. Beau needs to check in as well. We check into the hotel and stuff. And I said, oh, this is, you shouldn't have done that. That's nice. He goes, no, we're not done. He goes, we're going to go downstairs. We went downstairs. This is my friend Beau Smith. He's going to need a badge to get in. He's one of my guests, blah, blah, blah. He took care of me, making sure he knew I'd never flown, never been to a convention. And I'm a 30-year-old man. So, I mean, he's treating me like a son or a grandson, him and Roz both. He goes, now, Beau, and we're getting ready to party. He was going to go to their room and I was going to mine. He goes, I got a panel Saturday at this time. He goes, make sure you come to it. Okay. I said, yeah, I'm not going to miss that. Yeah. So Saturday, I go to the thing. He introduces me at his panel and says, this is my friend Beau Smith I met on the way out here. Would you stand up? And, check. And he goes, now, Beau, I'm going to give you, he goes, what question do you have for me? I said, well, of all the characters that you've worked on, I get in this argument with my friends all the time. I think you're the voice of Sergeant Fury. He goes, we're friends, Beau, but you're wrong. He goes, it'd have to be the Thing, Ben Grimm. That's my voice. It was my head. I was 12 years old and my head was exploding. I mean, that made that first convention, my first airplane flight, all that. And again, what I talked about earlier, it made the payback that much more important to me. If I could treat somebody like that, if I ever get to write comics, if I ever get to pull somebody in, if they've got, the talent and this and that, so much stuff that happened to me before comics has really been what has influenced me being lucky enough to be able to do this for 35 years and not get tossed out of the party yet. I still shake my head when I think about it. It's been that long and I'm still doing things. I mean, to publish Wynonna Earp for 20 years was huge, but to get a TV show based off that and have it run 4 years when you're 60 years old,
yeah,
that really doesn't happen. I would tell people that in interviews early on, and then it was proven not the anomaly that I thought it was soon after that, when one of my buddies, best friends since college, local guy, Clint McElroy, who I've started trading comic books with in class and stuff, does the same thing. And in my opinion, even on a bigger level. He had been a local disc jockey in our area for years and quite famous on the Wall of Fame here in Huntington. He was that good and stuff. Loves comics like I do. He's exactly the same age I am. He has 3 sons, all 3 super creative. Incredibly creative, and have been since they were kids. I was in the hospital with each one of them were born and never would have dreamed it. Those 3 boys, I say boys, they're all grown men and they're roughly around your all's age.
Yeah.
Have kids or anything, but they do a podcast that they started, and it's called My Brother and Me. They do another one called The Adventure Zone. Those things, and Clint is with them on, and that has gone just berserk. They do national tours. They've got Jimmy Buffett coming backstage going, I've been a fan of this forever. The guy that did Hamilton, the play, Miranda,
yeah,
same thing. He's been on their show, done this stuff.
Yeah.
They've had 2 or 3 New York Times bestsellers from the graphic novels of the Adventure Zone that they've done for it. Just mega success. And that happened to him at 60. And he's from my area. And he's one of my buddies. For that to happen, there's something in the water here, boys. You need to come over this way and start drinking the water here. You're going to have to wait till you're 60, but what's 20,
close.
I've waited this long. I can wait till 60. I'm good. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad it happened that way, because if this would have happened to me at 25, I'd have found a way to screw it up.
Well, that's
for
the
sure.
question I was going to ask, is that it's so much, I don't know. I mean, I was such a dumbass at 22 and 23, but I feel like it's sweeter the older you are, because you can stay, even though you're in it and you're like busy. So can I compare it to this? The three of us, but I was the last one to have a kid, but the three of us had them later, and I was the last ones. Like, when's Joe going to get one by the by the goalie? And what I tell people, and I think it's similar, is I know it's fleeting. I would not have known that in 22, 23 years old.
Yeah.
This is fleeting. It's just like that. And every once in a while, you just take a pause and go, isn't this fantastic?
Oh, 100%.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
the best way, and honestly, and we're not successful, but just our little things, every once in a while, I'll walk off stage. I'll do something like, for example, that night, I didn't get to hang out with you, but Jim Shooter was drinking me under the table at the bar. And he got up to leave, and I was like, can I get a water, please? Can I get a water while he's gone? And I realized later that one of us is having old fashions. This guy and the other guy's just drinking wine. So there's a reason one of us got to have dinner beforehand. But you just take a second and go, shit, where else would this have happened? And we didn't talk about comics. I mean, we did a little, but we were talking about 500 other things. We talked about his kid. We talked about George Romero because he was in Pittsburgh. And I was like,
yep.
Oh, never occurred to me, Jim, because I was like the third time I'd interviewed him. We were just saying, because we've got to, of all the conventions.
Sure.
I'm just giving you an example of, it's fleeting.
Yeah. Oh, it's been fleeting. I've looked at that from even getting in late in my 30s. I knew then everything could be the last. And guys, that really, since for social media and the internet and all that stuff, it's advanced that even more. Your last thing can be tomorrow. Easily, a lot quicker now. Where we used to crave being able to connect with the fans, especially on the business end. I know I did marketing wise. I wanted as much information from the retailers, the fans, the distributors as I could get to know how to sell the books that we had. Now you're getting too much information, and a lot of that is still in that. It's not just you suck, this rules, which when the internet and social media started, that was the kind of comment you got. Now you get, I saw where, I know you beat your cat when you were 10 years old, and I'm going to expose you on whatever when I decide to, all because you didn't make the Scarlet Witch do this in a book. I mean, it's an over exaggeration, but not by much.
No, it's not by much. I don't think
so.
I mean, you can say cancel. You think you can say cancel culture on here? I mean, I
don't even know if it's just more intense, people just being mean to each other, where you didn't used to have that. And I know it's not just comics, it's everything. I mean, it's everything you do. I'm sure guy working down at Burger King, they're on the Burger King Reddit site, that can happen. You just never know. That is it stands for everything that I did not get into comics for. You all put it so aptly a while ago, comic books bring so many people together. It's the common bond that brings people from all different lifestyles and places together. I mean, I am such good friends and have been for 35 years with so many people that are so different from me. And comic books is the common bond that we can always talk at shorthand and discuss. And I love that aspect of it. I love the aspect that Jack Kirby, Stan Lee, Mike Baron, Walt Simonson, Tim Truman, guys like that stuck their hand out to me. They didn't have to. They didn't even have Robert Kanigher, who created Sergeant Rock, used to call me. I was the Sergeant Rock fan club president, so deemed by him in the letters column because I wrote so many letters. Murray Boltinoff, I would call Murray Boltinoff, the editor, every Wednesday. He said, "Beau, call me on Wednesdays, because on Wednesdays Joe Kubert's in the office." And he goes, "And you can talk to Joe." That's how I met Joe Kubert. So every Wednesday I would call and talk to Murray about comics, this, that, and the other. He would put Joe on, and Joe would answer any questions I had. We would discuss things, and I wasn't in the business. They didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
Robert Kanigher called me from England once, telling me about his 100-page graphic novel of the Avengers that he was going to write. Of course, Joe's going to draw it. I mean, I haven't asked Joe, but Joe's going to draw it, of course. And he was going to make all the Avengers nude in this, except for their avatar, like Captain America's A, this, that, the other. And it was a long hour conversation, and it made metaphysical sense in what he was talking about with the storyline stuff. But why, why do that? And that's above and beyond.
It's
Shooter talking to me at the Marvel pool party they always have and stuff. And we, like what you were talking about, Joe, we just talked about boxing and things like that.
Yeah.
Didn't have to, and yeah, a part of it is me being a fan and putting people on a little higher level, because you admire them and stuff. But I was always pretty good about being able to rein that in, because, it just, I'm not that type of, that pedestal can easily be knocked down. You want to know people. Sometimes you don't want to know them all that well. I want to continue to enjoy their work, whether they're rock star or this or that, because music or films, and actors and directors that I have met even before our show and stuff. Because when I worked for Todd, we had the animated series, we had the movie. So you meet a lot of people, and sometimes I found you don't want to. You want to continue to enjoy their work. So, I don't want to meet them. And there's you'd always want to meet in my age group. Always wanted to meet John Wayne or Jimmy Stewart and things like that. But that goes back to my real childhood. But once you got to about college age, you find out, maybe I don't need to meet all of them, because not all of them are going to be a Walt Simonson, a Mike Barron, even a Robert Kanigher, who was quirky in a lot of his ways. But what a hell of a writer. This Sergeant Rock stuff, he was doing trend-setting social stuff then, long before anybody else was going, hey, you got to be more diverse. You got to add this in. I learned a lot emotionally reading his Sergeant Rock stories. Just like with Stan's, I had to have that dictionary beside me when I read a Stan Lee comic, because he used words I didn't know, and learned a lot.
Yeah. Well, and I know we've been about an hour and 15 minutes, and I know you're probably getting tired. So, Chad, you got one more, and James, you got one more?
Yeah, I have. Chad, you want to go? You want me to go?
I'll make mine fast.
Okay.
And it's kind of a silly question, but you did write one a short story for one of the most beloved heroes in Star Wars canon, Boba Fett.
Oh,
in Star Wars Tales number 7. I gotta ask. I have not read it, but I was reading the description of it, and it sounds amazing. I want to find this copy and read it. But how was it writing Boba Fett? And also, what do you think of what they're doing with the character now? Because
to answer your last question first, I like the Mandalorian a lot better. Than the Boba Fett, because to me it's just a solid John Ford Western almost.
Exactly.
It's the Searchers. It's Stagecoach.
Yes.
Is Al Green was.
And then the Boba Fett series literally is Boba Fett standing around.
Well, the Boba Fett series turned into the Mandalorian.
That's exactly what happened.
I wanted just my small. I'm thankful always to see it, but I was hoping there would be. I would have more of an emotional investment. I keep wanting, and it's bad when I've done this since I was a kid. It's like when I watch Gilligan's Island, Lost in Space, and Land of the Giants as a little kid. I thought, and I was a little kid, I was fairly well adjusted. I said, Gilligan, Dr. Smith, and that big loudmouth guy, I want them to die. If I were the other members, I'd kill them. And because I don't have an emotional investment. They're a pain in the ass. They're dragging the story down. with Boba Fett, I was just hoping for more action. I got to be real honest with you. I wanted more action. I wanted him to be the I wanted it to be the Mandalorian on steroids. I really did. I wanted the reason why he was who he is to be, I wanted a bigger Western. That's the only way I can think of to describe it.
Yeah.
I enjoy it. I'm glad it's there, but I wanted a bigger Western.
Awesome.
So that's the answer to the last question.
Okay.
My answer to the first one. I have never, I'd seen probably the first 3 to 4 Star Wars movies when they were in the theater. The rest I saw, on television at some point. Boba Fett was always my wannabe favorite. I mean, they never gave me enough in the movies. And again, when I got the offer to do this, I said, I'm ready. They just said, you can kind of make it a little Westerny if you want, as far as taste, and stuff. I looked at it as I'll never get to do another one again. They're going to find out that this is not the way. They're going to kick me out. And the editor warned me ahead of time. Lucasfilm at the time is really strict. You'll probably have to do a few rewrites on this and stuff. So, and I expected that, but it was my chance to not make fun of by any stretch of imagination, but to add. At that time, eBay was big. So I was going to make that bid amount was what, new bounty hunter, you bid this. I added that. I wanted Boba Fett to talk more. I wanted him to be likable. Again, the Guy Gardner thing. I said, I'm going to put this small shot in here to make Boba Fett likable. And the part, and I had no problems with that, got to do that. The part I thought I was going to have a problem with was that showing that he was married and had a child. And that, I waited for them to come down on me with a sledgehammer. But, and again, sent that in, the editor goes, I'm going to send it in. I hope it's going to make it, but I don't think it will. Great. We like it. We really like the idea about him having a wife and a daughter. We may even use part of that sometime. And that was a short note. That made my day. I made no changes. I had no changes to do. And my biggest thrill of doing that was I got to do a Boba Fett Western. But now, for whatever reason, him having a daughter, having a wife in the past has rung some bells with some people, and they like it. I haven't had anybody chew me out at a convention yet or yell at me
because if anybody will chew you out, it's Star Wars fans.
Yep, I had none of that. He's not Bruce Wayne, damn it, that kind of a thing. So, but I love doing that, and would do it again in a million years. I would love to do Chewbacca. That was always a favorite character of mine. Because everybody always say, "Oh, Beau, you'd like to do a Han Solo." I said, "No, I like Chewbacca and Boba Fett the best." Those were, Jabba the Hutt would have been great because I could have made that. Oh gosh, that would have been fun. But
Jabba was mine as a kid, so I'll be completely honest.
He was so vile. He was great. Oh, he was great. Loved it.
And these guys, I was introduced through Star Wars Return of the Jedi first. I didn't know that there was 2 other ones before that until later on. That was like that was my Star Wars movie for years. I was like,
that's good. That's good. That's excellent.
I do have to argue with you really quick before James asks his last question. Jonathan Harris is Mr. Smith, sir. That's the reason you tuned into Lost in Space. Well, with all the alliteration from Jonathan Harris as Dr. I said Mr. Smith, Dr. Smith. That's the reason I tuned in. Smith, how about that? How that? You clinging? I
just get too excited. No, you're 100% right because of. I watch the show all the time, and I quoted him the most. Yeah. I mean, I even quoted him as a father when Nick came home from school. The teacher, he doesn't like me, blah, 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 blah. You got to go in and talk to him. So I went in to talk to the teacher and ended up, Nick was, he wasn't doing exactly what he was supposed to be doing. So I came home and, how did it go? And blah, blah, blah. What'd you say to him? I said, well, he told me this. Did you do that? Yeah, I did that. He go, what'd you tell him? I said, take the boy, spare me. he just looked at me, he goes, because that's from that old show, isn't it? He said, indeed it is, my boy. Indeed it is.
Beau.
So,
oh my God, I'd end it there if James didn't have one last question.
And by the way, and argue with Joe. Tell him it sucks, and then tell him how much you hate Alien. That's a Peter David call.
Who was it? Peter David's like,
Yeah,
fuck that
Peter-
cat, right? Sorry.
Peter
not
David.
the-
Peter
yeah,
David.
I want to go back
on
to the
Alien.
cat.
I wouldn't
I
have
have
been back for
never-
the cat. That's the stupidest third act.
I know we're calling
Oh,
back Peter David, but that's one of the more happiest moments of my life is Peter David putting Joe in. No, Alien sucks.
Sorry.
Oh,
If you're able to see the rest of the basement, Beau, there's one sheets and they're all original all the way through here. And over there, my
gee.
precious ones are over there, and Alien's one of them. So anyway, James.
Oh,
Well, by the way, you mentioned Gilligan earlier, and now all I want to see is Beau Smith presents the mashup between Lord of the Flies and Gilligan's Island. I want to see that
Hey.
so bad now. That's my dream. So there you go.
I've been writing that in my head since I was a kid. So yes, you would see
Gilligan going to end up like Piggy.
That being said, actually, just because you've talked so much about people that had
so
an
much, period.
well, but no, talks about people that had an impact on you and people that brought you in. It's a cliche question, but I want to ask it anyway because why wouldn't I? Knowing that we do have people that we encounter people and we've interviewed authors and things like that and different people with different backgrounds. You talked about how you broke in. What advice would you give to somebody out there that goes, well, I have this idea, but how do I get that idea out there? What would you recommend people actually try to do?
To be honest with you, one of the first things, in fact, it's dated now because it was before the internet hit big, but I wrote a book called No Guts, No Glory, How to Market Yourself. It's got blue collar, bare bones things to do, not do. And if you can exclude all the dated stuff from technology and time, find that in a dollar box sometime and read it. But the first thing I do, and I see it happen a lot, and I made sure I did not do that when I set out to get into comics. A lot of people want to be friends and think they're going to get work from writers and artists. And I can see the attraction, that makes sense, but they're not the ones that are going to hire or fire or pay you.
Yeah.
My first thing was get to know the editors and assistant editors, because if you want to be a creator, a writer, and if you're talented enough to be an artist or both, definitely that's where you make your connections. And in this modern times, emails are ignored. No one answers their phones, that kind of thing. Snail mail, it could make a minor comeback for a person if they use that for contacts. Because I got to be honest with you, especially when I worked at McFarland, I would go to the post office because they don't deliver the mail. This town's so small. I would go to the post office to pick up my mail, and sometimes it wouldn't fit in the big box that I had. They would have to give it to me in bags. People were writing because they could not get a hold of Todd, so they're getting a hold of Beau, the next best thing. And we found a lot of great artists and writers through just cold call mails because they mailed it in. That could work these days. It possibly could. A lot of people who have self-published their own books, that's your perfect pitch book to walk in with too. That's something to hand somebody. But the thing is, everyone trying to get into comics thinks they're a writer. Not all of them think they're artists, because you can see that right in front of you. But everybody, I don't care, use me as an example. I was in sales and marketing, but I can be a writer. The guy in the mailroom, I can be a writer. And most of them can, maybe, but you've got to have something to say. They've got to have something to say. They can't do a villain and just start using Dr. Doom speak. Dr. Doom is the only guy that talks like that. Why is the die cast now and, Shakespearean stuff, but it's have something to say. Know the editors, use snail. Think of ways to market yourself. You're the product. your talent is not going to get looked at until you can get your foot in the door. And again, I'm an introvert at heart, and the fact that I don't need a lot of people around me all the time. I like, my short little group that I've got. Of course, at my age, they start croaking on you, but you just take the volume and turn it up a little bit. You're not becoming P.T. Barnum or anything, but you're again, I got that lesson from Stan Lee. Stan wasn't like it all the time, but I'm sure he turned the volume up a little bit to do those things. And you got to market yourself, and I'm going to give you maybe it'll be more relatable, but like when we did Huntington Con.
Yeah.
And remember, Joe, I told you, you did your homework. And I honestly meant that. That was a high compliment because, to be honest with you, 35 years of doing it, I've been at more of them where they didn't. And, Beau, here's the first question I get in those cases. Tell us a little about your career. Tell us a little bit about yourself. And then I'm sitting
there. Just went in for a job interview.
Yes. And
I don't do
it's refreshing to have someone at least be able to, ask the questions. And it's the same way if you put that in the assistant editor's viewpoint is, what am I really bringing to offer them?
Mm-hmm.
I primed the pump, like I said, with letter hacks and doing this and doing that, signing all 4 of my names. I mean, whatever, but it's whatever works for you, and no one knows you better than yourself.
Yeah.
So what can I do to stand out amongst it? And nowadays, the bombardment of people, that are out there, and true talent will always come out. There's no doubt about it. If you've got something, that bit will come. It really will. It'll even be in the rough stuff. I look back at things I wrote and did in 86, 87, and I cringe, and just like anybody else does. But
it's why we can't
sparks.
listen to our podcast.
We don't
tell you this, guys, but when this is out and live and I see it, I'll probably get it through about 5 minutes, and I always go, I can't stand to listen to my stump jumping voice anymore.
Yeah. We don't listen to this either. Who would listen to this horse shit?
Especially the longer I go.
We loved it. Dude, we love having you, but we don't listen to ourselves either. Man, I can't thank you enough. What I want to say, I wanted your craziest Todd McFarlane story. I have.
I've got those.
We didn't talk about Lobo.
Yeah. We didn't do any of that.
Well, one day, if I'm lucky, you guys can have me back, and we'll.
If you're lucky, you mean if we're lucky? We're the lucky ones. You gave us
sorry.
You, as I always say, you gave us the greatest gift you can ever give anyone. You gave us your time.
No, I appreciate that.
Because our time is finite, and it means the world to us that you took an hour and a half of your time to talk about. So we'd love to have you back on if you'd like to, and talk about some of the things eventually. Just let us know when.
That'd be no problem. I appreciate, Joe, you cosplaying me this evening. The beard, the ball cap. If next time the horn ring glasses, and I appreciate that.
Well, I've had 2020 up until 2 years ago, and now I noticed that I start picking things up, going, "Why is it so dark when I read this? Why do I need more light?" Or as they say from where I'm from in the holler, I need more light.
That is the way. Okay, my wife and I will tell you this real quick. My wife and I were born 5 miles away from each other. That's it. I was in Huntington. She was in Cerrito.
Uh-huh.
I talk like George Plimpton compared to her. Beth, if your name was Mike, tonight we're going to fight, Mike. I'm not kidding. Mike, it is. And the best part was we landed in Los Angeles for the Wynonna Earp premiere. I mean, that sounds so, Hollywood. So we landed in Hollywood, and we did, and the plane hits, and she's flown a million times, gone everywhere. Look at that big silver plane over there. That was and all these people turned around and looked at her. I said, "Well, Minnie Pearl, you've made a lot of new friends just now." But it did. I just had to look at that big silver bird over there. She's the best.
It happens all the time. I totally get it. In fact, I got it at my work today. But anyway, so we'd love to have you back on sometime and torture you for at least another hour about I mean, we would love to just get into some of the McFarlane stuff.
And that was a wonderful time period in my life, so I'd be glad to.
Okay. Well, all right. So I'm going to stop recording now. This has been Beau Smith. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Ah.